So we had some kind of a riot, insurrection, coup d'etat, whatever you want to call it, happen in DC, and it's got all the usual bedwetters peeing their pants. And I just thought I should offer a take on it since I'm not seeing anything to my liking. But first, let's review some of the hysteria, starting with Mr. Hysteria, Robert Reich, who said, "Call me old fashioned, but when armed insurgents breached the Capitol building at the request of a president, I'd call it an attempted coup." Well, as usual, Mr. Robert Reich is wrong about almost everything. So, first of all, the people who entered the Capitol were not armed. Secondly, no such request was made by a president, certainly not the current president, who told people to stop what they're doing and to go home in peace. And finally, it was not an attempted coup. There was no declaration or demand of power made. The closest anyone got to power was when a couple of goofballs sat in Speaker Pelosi's chair. Now, does anyone seriously believe that said goofballs were magically transformed into the Speaker of the House by sitting into a magic chair? No, no serious person believes this bullshit. And Robert Reich is simply not a serious person. Well, let's turn to some supposedly serious people like Stacey Abrams, who seems to have become some kind of hero lately. And she said, "There needs to be unrest in the streets." Or Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who said, "Protesters should not let up." Oh, wait. That's what they were saying when the mostly peaceful protesters were setting Washington, D.C. on fire, throwing bricks through windows, occupying federal buildings. Oh, but no. That was no threat to democracy. That was righteous indignation. These people make me want to vomit with their hypocrisy. Well, let's get to the big cheese incoming. Joe Biden, who called it one of the darkest days in American history and described it as, I quote, "an assault on the citadel of liberty." Oh my God. You think the Capitol building is the citadel of liberty? I mean, I got news to tell you. It's a building. It's a pile of bricks. Liberty is not contained in nor protected by that big pile of bricks. And if it were, it would probably be in the basement being tortured like Abu Ghraib or something. You know, with only very few exceptions, the purpose of Congress is not to protect your liberty. It's to line the pockets of the people occupying that building while convincing the gullible to re-elect them ad infinitum. Congress is just a big auction on stolen goods, and the new executive in thief is a prime example. You know, conservatives are really no better than liberals on the worship of symbology, probably worse with their obsession over flags, uniforms, and authority. But I'll get back to them later. Now, closer to home on my Facebook feed, super genius Grace Kalea posted a photo of the guy who sat in Pelosi's chair. And then she wrote this: "This ass is sitting in Speaker Pelosi's office area. He needs to be named and arrested. He is a terrorist." A terrorist? Who is he terrorizing? A chair? Are you afraid for the sacred chair, Grace? Honest to God, you people are the people who claim to believe in science, and yet you're magical chair worshippers. I mean, the guy has apparently been arrested, no doubt for trespassing, not for harming the sacred upholstery. Even the frickin' Olive Garden restaurant is piling on, canceling free breadsticks for Ted Cruz, and banning people known to have participated in, I quote, "the violent uprising against our government." Violent? Interesting. I mean, there were shots fired. A woman was killed. But who was shooting at who? Well, enough about what other people are saying. What do I say? Well, I say I told you so. For months, I've been warning that the lackadaisical approach to this election, meaning the electronic and mail-in balloting, was inherently untrustable, and in this era of low trust, that it would lead to violence. Here we are. Now, as long as people sincerely believe that they can change things by voting, that they have a voice, they'll stay calm. And if not, they're going to riot. You know, if people begin to believe that their democracy is fraudulent, if they conclude that voting is a charade, that the system is rigged, and is run in secret by a small group of powerful, dishonest people acting in their own interest, then God knows what's going to happen. And, well, now we know too. So don't be surprised. Hell, Martin Luther King warned of this decades ago when he called riots the language of the unheard. People have been calling for an evaluation, audit of this election, and they've been told to shut up. They become unheard. Even a moron like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez got it right in a radio interview when speaking. She said, I quote, "Because once you have a group that is marginalized and marginalized and marginalized, they have no choice but to riot." Okay, these are leftists pointing out the logic of this. This is not a right-wing or a left-wing thing. It's a reality thing. If you marginalize people, if you quash their voice, they are going to act out. So who has been marginalized and marginalized? And what is the leftist reaction to this so-called riot in which the sacred chairs were violated? Marginalize people even more. Ban everyone. Ban everything. Ban anyone who dares to point out that the emperor has no clothes, or even ask a question. Nearly anyone has condemned the so-called rioters, though no one has condemned the police who shot the woman in the head. So I guess liberals like the police again. As long as they're shooting at white people wearing red hats, no problem, right? Even conservative tough guy Don Bongino has said that there's no place for political violence. Really? No place. Are you sure, Dan? You might want to reflect on how your country was formed, Dan. And if this past election was won by fraud, if the nation was overtaken by a coup d'etat, and if you truly believe, Dan, then what the hell more would it take? For years we saw the left throw everything they could at the right and Trump particularly. For months, we saw them burn down neighborhoods, small businesses, and lay siege to federal courthouses. And still, they shouted for revolution by any means. And the leadership among the Democrats called for more. The media called for more. The dipshits on my Facebook feed called for more. They shouted that they want blood. Meanwhile, the minute anyone on the right does anything other than take a knee, sit down, roll over, and die a quiet death, the Republicans call for a crackdown to ID those involved and throw the book at them. What have conservatives or Republicans conserved in the last 60 years? Please, tell me your victories for freedom and the American way. Yeah, worst of all is people on the right trying to blame this on the left, that they were infiltrated. It's pathetic. If you truly believe that this election was stolen, that our politicians are selling us out to international corporations, China, and kleptocrats within the government, then what happened in D.C., if anything, wasn't enough. Not by a long shot. The past 4 years, and especially the past week, has shown just how weak the Republican Party is. There's a simple solution to all this. It's been there for ages. Just carefully examine the claims, audit the election, at least in the contested states, and make it a public, open examination and presentation. Then the people will be reassured. Don't just tell them to believe or shut up. Honestly, if I thought my candidate had honestly won the election, I'd be the first in line to say, hell yeah, let's have an audit, just to rub it in and remove all doubt. But there are 80 million people, about half the working population, are not going to sit back and accept it as is. Who doesn't understand this? Well, apparently, the liberal media, big tech, CIA alliance doesn't understand it. Or more likely, they understand it all too well. what an open inquiry would find. And that is why they're united to stop any and all discussion of it. This censorship is a tell. The truth doesn't require the protection of censorship. Lies do. So who is lying to whom? Any person who would resist confirming their victory either knows it was a fraud, facilitated it, are self-blinded, or they have no idea what leaving it unresolved in the minds of 80 million people will bring. There is something worse than insurrection, and that is the thing that causes insurrection. They thought Trump was the river, but he was the dam. And there is a flood of angry people who have been left without a voice, and those with no voice revert to the fist. As JFK put it decades ago, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. So it's going to be violence. Don't say you weren't warned. I prefer peace. I've laid out a way to have a peaceful resolution, not necessarily a revolution. But as usual, my preferences don't count for shit. So it's going to be violence. And if the battle line is drawn between freedom and the techno-fascist liberal control state and all the little ninnies who cheer it on, believing that they're anti-fascists or whatever the fuck they think they are, then I say the time for a second American Revolution has arrived. And I am fully expecting to be disappointed. Peace out, and good luck. Lord knows you're going to need it.